Good afternoon. Trying to control that which they can't love. I'll just throw that sentence out there. I thought it might be a good idea because I really didn't provide some background on me, on who I am, where I come from, some of my background, just, so that people get sort of a feel on, who I am, where I came from, my basic experiences, things like that. Because I put a lot of stuff up pretty quick about things that I experienced that I share with everybody, right? Because I just process so much. So I was lying under the tree while my phone was recharging, and I love to hang out with trees. I talk to everything. Okay, I talked to ducks. I had a duck a little while ago that was coming around me. Okay, and he was nibbling around everything that was around me. He walked over the top of me. They read your energy, okay? And that's sort of, before I forget, because things move so fast through me that if I don't say it when it's there, I'll lose it. It's gone. It's just gone, okay? I normally don't operate on memory. And particularly now because this time stream for me between past, present, and future is closing. Okay? It's like I'm returning home. Even though it's like running two live streams. Okay? You're always home through your heart, which is eternity, right? And your etheric form, which is spirit, eternal spirit. You have so much love to give to everything there is in the universe. So I'll start with probably the most graphic illustration, if you want to think of it that way, of something that I experienced within me that deeply affected me. And when I look in the mirror and I'm thinking about what I experienced, it's a frame of reference. You're realizing the nature of who you are in spirit. Of, in this case, how much you care, how much compassion, and how much empathy that you have. So I was just thinking about, I was sort of reliving the experience when I think about going back in time. Was when I was 9 years old, right around 9 years old. This would have been probably right around 1950. I remember, I could have been 8 or 9. I don't remember the exact date. But the image and the experience is always very in vivid color, moving pictures. It's always there. So I was with my father, who was driving a 1949 Ford. I was living in Orinda, California at the time. And my dad had his own fabrication shop because he was an aeronautical engineer. He worked on a lot of X projects. My father was a former U.S. Navy fighter pilot. He was born in 1913, so he experienced World War I, went through the Depression, and then he went to aeronautical school. He went to Rensselaer Polytechnic, probably one of the best aeronautical schools in the country. My dad got a master's degree in metallurgy and a master's degree in aeronautical engineering. And he was flying planes for Grumman before World War II and delivering them to Pensacola for Navy pilots going through flight school. So my dad sort of saw the writing on the wall, and sort of jumping back and forth here. Saw the writing on the wall, knew that we were going to get into the war. So my dad went ahead and enlisted in the U.S. Navy, and since he was already a pilot, I believe he started out as a lieutenant, JG, or lieutenant. And anyway, he started with VF-27. He ended up on the Swanee. He went to Operation Torch, which was in October 1942, as I remember it. And he was flying CAP, which is Combat Air Patrol, for General Patton's landings of his troops in Tunisia against the Nazis, the Afrika Korps, Rommel, right? Okay, so my dad was hit by friendly fire. He went down in the drink in the Atlantic, and fortunately for a guy that was on the bridge of a destroyer, which was the USS Force, I believe it was DD 673, I believe was the name, I forget. I was going to write a story on my dad, a pamphlet, because a lot of the other squadrons that served in the Mediterranean and in the Pacific just didn't get their dues, okay? So what ended up happening, my dad ended up in the drink. A guy on the bridge with a pair of binoculars just happened to see a little tiny white speck going up and down in the drink, right? So they're looking for downed pilots. My dad got hit with friendly fire, and so this guy on the bridge saw a little tiny white speck. Hey, that's my dad. You got to go pick him up in order for me to be. That's my future self talking to the guy on the bridge of that destroyer. I got to come into this world in 1951 through my biological mother's womb. So you got to go get my dad. Now, if you don't think that kind of stuff happens, then you don't understand how this works. Okay? Trust me, it does. So as it turns out, my dad got picked up, and then he came back to Norfolk, Virginia, which is where he was stationed at. He would have originally ended up on the Yorktown, which is CV5, and would have been there at Midway, and all the rest of that, right? Except that he was on Liberty when Pearl Harbor hit, and Yorktown headed out of Norfolk. So when he got to Norfolk Air Station, it was already pulling out of the harbor. So my dad ended up on a Jeep carrier, which was a Swanee. So he ended up going to Pearl Harbor, and then they went to Guadalcanal. And my dad was at Guadalcanal through, when was that? Late December, January, February, and which was known as the Cactus Air Force at the time. My dad was stationed at what is known as the East Airstrip, just for information purposes. And then my dad was flying Combat Air Patrol with a bunch of other, I believe he was flying an F-6F Hellcat built by Grumman at the time. And they ran it at 36 Zeeks, as he called them, which was a Zero. I believe it was a Model 21, one of the best planes that the Japanese were producing at the time, although I think in terms of starships, okay? And his orders were to break them up, even though there was only, as I remember it, 6 of them going up against 36 Zeeks. So you know they're outnumbered like crazy. So I don't remember how many my dad got before he went down. It took a 20 millimeter through the side of the fuselage, tore up his knee, and made what's called a dead stick landing because of so much loss of blood when he landed at Guadalcanal. So he went to New Zealand for R&R, and then he went back to the United States. He was a flight instructor at Jacksonville, and then he formed his own squadron. That would have been VBF 84. That was at Los Alamitos, and they were scheduled to go to Operation Olympic, which was the potential invasion of Japan. And then shortly thereafter, some years later after that, is when he met my mother at a Navy ball. She happened to be hooked up with big money out of New York, and that would have been the Simpson. You remember Wallace Simpson? You know, remember King Edward and all that? So my grandfather adopted my mother, okay, which is White Bear, on the female side of things, okay, which was in an orphanage. So my mother was adopted by a very rich family, which is what at the time was known as old New York money, even though my grandfather worked his way up from as a stock clerk to become chairman of the board at Simpson, Spence & Young, which at the time was one of the biggest biggest shipping companies in the world. And I realized that, man, you got an in. You can go make $1 billion. But of course, you know, when you're an Indian, you're not thinking about money. You're always in love. So, you know, we're electron givers, not electron accumulators. That's what I call it. We're energy producers, not energy takers. Okay? You're always wanting to give away. So, anyway, I was born and was born in New Jersey. Came out on TWA. I guess that was called a Connie, right? The twin tail, vertical stabilizers. And lived in Brentwood for a short period of time. My mother didn't like the house because she thought it was a fire trap. Sure enough, in the Bel Air fire, that thing went down. Got burned right up. So we moved out to Northridge. That's when my dad worked on X projects. And my dad put me in the military academy. So I was trained how to take apart an M14 carbine, nut by bolt, blindfolded. And you learn everything in the Army manual about how to do everything. Survival skills, weapons, everything. So at a very early age, I was already being trained, okay? To think in terms of chess games and military and strategy and tactics and basically how to be a trained killer if you want, or how to survive or defend yourself. When I fast forward on that, you know, I spent most of my time either in a private school, public school. Most of the time was a public school. And I worked my way up from, when I was in I was always a rebel. Which means I'm a free spirit, which means you don't tell me what the fuck to do, okay? I know what the rule book is, which is what love is. So you're always measuring your relationships based on the energy of the communication between it and you, right? But when you're already living in a state of peace and harmony and balance, you have to make compromises and sacrifices all the time because you want to keep your energy up all the time. So you realize, just as I did reading my first newspaper at age 4, I'm in a spiritual battlefield. So you have to navigate accordingly to maintain your energy where you're always wanting to restore the light wherever you go. So that sort of jumps forward to being 9 years of age when I was with my dad driving through Oakland one night. And this was what really startled me, which was when all of a sudden the traffic begins to slow down and I could see this ambulance up ahead on the right with its little red light. And I'm going, what happened there? Hey, what happened over here? And then as we inched up closer, all of a sudden, I could feel this deep pain and suffering. Okay? And it shook me really deeply because I began to realize that I was experiencing the pain and the suffering of the being that was on a gurney. So this deeply affected me when I realized that here is a being, and this being could have been from anywhere in the universe. What I was experiencing was the loss of energy in that being. So I was experiencing the loss of energy in me. And it shook me up. And I never forgot that as long as I live. That I'm not supposed to experience that. What happened? So this is, later on as I got a little bit older and I began to realize I'm beginning to spinning more information and I'm becoming more aware of how this all works. I'm trying to put together what happened here. I'm not supposed to be experiencing this. I'm not supposed to be experiencing any loss of energy anywhere I go, which is entropy. You're an energy giver. What happened to my universe? So I realized it's like going down to the size of a pinhead. Wow, what's holding our energy down? So for the first time when I was about 15 and I was up in San Francisco and I started feeling walking around the streets, yeah, this is where it's supposed to be. We're raising the energy. That's called busting through the harmonics. It's like, man, we're in a vice. What's holding all our energy down? So, I was a pretty young teenager when I realized, this is what was going on. You realize you're in a war, an energy war, an electrical war, okay? So I began to realize, because of all the information that I was aware of at such a young age, this wasn't my first rodeo, okay? So you realize you're having to navigate through a distorted energy zone. So it's like, when are the reinforcements coming? Okay? So I began to realize when I can look at me, which means I'm observing me. It's like being above the earth and looking down, observing what I'm doing. At the same time, I'm experiencing sort of both. If that makes any sense to anybody, okay? So I went through high school and got kicked out, okay? Got thrown out for using pot, okay? They came to my house when I don't want to get into telling all these stories because I got a gazillion stories that can be told, right, about everything. There is to experience because we're storytellers that go on forever, okay? So I just wanted to share some of that background from an educational sort of things. I love to learn. I have an intense passion for learning and just pouring through books. Being with her, learning through her everything she has to teach me. So nature was my teacher in this biosphere, okay? So I know that this isn't the first place I've ever been, okay? So I love to be around everything that's living, vibrating like crazy. I love to be around hot magma. So I know that, for example, when I think about the spirit of fire, the spirit that is in water, purifying yourself, I realize you have access, or how do I put this? You have everything that represents what the universe is at your disposal, okay, in order to navigate and remain, or how do I put this, trying to restore your purity, the purity of your spirit, which is the purity of your energy, okay? So obviously one of the best elements in spirit that will help keep your spirit purified is what? Fire, okay? So you got to keep that furnace lit. So your light is burning as hot as it can. Because you realize you're being exposed in spirit to an enormous amount of contamination. So you intuitively know which one of those elements you need to use to keep yourself pure, because you realize that you have a job to do here, which is keeping the light on. Okay? A cosmic antenna, a broadcast lighthouse. Putting the antenna in. Hey, I'm here. Come and get me. You want more light to come in here? Come on, bring some more love in here. We need more love in here. We got to raise the love frequency on the planet. This is a love is a law planet. Where are the reinforcements? Where are the rest of my Indians? Okay, well, we know what happened to them and why they killed them all off. They killed off all the lighthouses. So he began to realize what the war is all about. Even though I don't think in either or terms when you have infinite creative imagination, right? Okay. So, this brings us... So anyway, because I'm trying to put all this puzzle together, right? Trying to explain causality and sort of put this movie together by reverse engineering it. That's really what it is. See, it's already together in your mind on how they do everything that they do to program people in order to feed off others, in which they're never in harmony with each other. That's easy to put together. You can do that just by being aware of it when you're running as much light as we do, which means you're spinning so much data that it's like, man, it's already put together. So now you got to sort of reverse engineering, which means put together the building blocks. Let's go back to the beginning. How did this start? So the first thing I began to look at was the history. How far back do we got to go in recycling this kind of energy through genetics? Because that's what you're experiencing, okay? So I realized, for instance, my avatar has taken an enormous amount of hits, okay? So it's like, what happened to the self-repair in this? So I looked at the genetics. Patty shared a lot of that with me, with actually everybody, because you can go find that out on Soho Triple Spiral DNA on Project Ascension. That's the title of the particular video that she did with Karen and Luke McDonald, okay? And you begin to understand that the amount of changes, text edit changes, data changes in the DNA assembly that Guy had put together was a crime, horrific crime. But when you understand what beings like that do and why they do it, it's like, what did you expect? They're acting exactly the way they're supposed to act. Okay? These are demons, sorcerers. Okay? They don't want your energy feeling that much power, that much light. Heck no. All I have to do is look at all the damage that's been done in this biosphere. Okay? So, anyway, when I got out of high school, I went directly to work for CAL FIRE in Orange County. I spent 23 years in fire protection, and I went into as many different phases as I possibly could, because if someday you're going to be a chief or a commanding officer, okay, then I realized that everybody that is doing that job, and this is sort of how you perceive your universe anyway, is because what is the function of a fire department or anybody that works in emergency services? That's to minimize the damage and the amount of suffering or the loss of energy that everybody's going to experience. So if you're going to be the most effective being you possibly can as an Indian working in that sort of circle, okay, of what it is that you do as a function, then I wanted to be able to do everything that you can at every level in which we are doing that kind of job. So I bounced around into everything that related to fire protection, from hazmat to nuclear stuff, shipboard crash, wildland, structural, EMTs, everything the medics do, and short of what Red Adair does, which is, using dynamite or explosives, high explosive, to cap a well. I wanted to go do that, and I thought at one time I was going to be able to do that. I wanted to go to Iraq, where Hussein had set off all those wells. Okay, because look at the damage that's being done, right? So you're always looking at going after those, or if you will, stopping the amount of damage that's being done here, because we're going to experience all that. Okay, which is lowering your energy, which is pain and suffering, which is how all that works. Okay, so anyway, I went to school because I wanted to be able to someday make a greater impact on being able to turn this around in the other direction. So that means I got to go after the big polluters. So my goal was to go after the big polluters. So I went to the University of California, Irvine. I went through a postgraduate degree program in environmental engineering and social ecology. And then from there, I went directly into another postgraduate program at the University of Arkansas. And I spent quite a few years there, actually, taking a number of different courses. Because what I'm looking for is information in which I can glean and have access to all that data, all that information. Because what I'm doing is I'm putting data sets together. Okay? So I'm putting all this data together, which is a puzzle. Okay? And I know I'm probably running out of time on this particular video. So I finished those degree programs. I never went in to get a teaching job because that means that they're going to tell me how I'm supposed to teach, and I don't teach the way they teach, and I don't impart the information they do because that's programming. Okay? When I conduct a class, I do it in a circle, preferably around a big-ass tree that's living, okay, where the energies are up, like around a volcano or active magma, where the energy's way up, and we hold hands, and we go into our minds, okay, and we go into our spirit, and we begin to share the information. And what we're doing is we're learning, particularly with children, okay, how to attract more light, how to become a more powerful magnet. And we scale that energy out. Okay? So it's real easy to teach a child how to become a light warrior. Okay? You can do that before they're age 10, as a matter of fact. It's not very hard to do that. Okay? Because you're experiencing very powerful energy in spirit. So I always look at the girl on the planet. Look how powerful her spirit is. So like Patty said one day, you want to have a classroom just like her someday? Well, she's a teacher. So I look at the first example when I'm with a child. Take a child up to any tree in which there's fruit. That's free of charge. This is good energy. She loves you. Bang. Wow. Really? That's a powerful spirit that can do that. Yeah, she's the great living spirit in Mother Earth. So I introduce children to her, first and foremost. Okay? So that's the big energy service providers in the planet. You want to be one of those someday? Yeah! You want to be a goddess someday? A big one? With a powerful spirit? When you begin to impart the truth with that much love and that much light that they can feel through your energy of communication, and you take them out in nature with this stuff like this, they get it. They can experience it because they're feeling that energy. They're feeling the power of that love. Okay? So I'll leave you with that for the day. Have a great day. Love you all.